to which I can apply my methods. It's the same method, right? In the qualitative perspective, we think that variables are complex, interwoven, and difficult to measure. It is difficult to fully know something because you're probably not seeing everything. Your positionality keeps you from seeing all the things, right? Just the fact that you can't stay awake 24/7 and you can't see all things at all times, even from all angles, you're not omniscient. Despite even if you didn't have any epistemological beliefs, any assumptions that you filtered information through, you still couldn't see everything physically, right? Whereas in a quantitative perspective, we think that variables can be identified, all the variables can be identified and can be controlled, and relationships can be measured, right? And in a qualitative perspective, we tend to take an insider's point of view. Because we choose the subject matter based on our interest, it tends to be something to which we have some connection. We have some sense of insider-ness that we bring to the table, some insider knowledge that got us interested in the first place, whereas in a quantitative perspective, we take an outsider's point of view. We're just there watching. We're not interacting, we're not changing it, we're not involved. We're just observing it. What questions do we have about the two? This is just a review, so you may or may not, but what questions do you have about these two paradigms and the epistemologies, the assumptions that underlie them? I'm going to choose to believe that you really don't have any questions because it's a review. I'm choosing to believe that. And I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait because I know it's coming. There it is. Okay. So, we keep these separate and simple, right? I'm either going to be a qualitative researcher or a quantitative researcher. No problem. And that's how we teach them. We teach them separately. Indeed, when you go to grad school, you will take quantitative methods and you will take qualitative methods. And they're two separate classes. We teach them separately because it's easier for us to separate them. And I gotta be honest, most researchers prefer one to another, and so we obviously talk more about the one that we like because that's our positionality. We like the one, so that's the one we talk about, right? But I feel like maybe okay. I put this meme up here because we can say that we're just going to keep it separate and that there's no need for us to acknowledge the role that our own personal stuff brings to either one of them. But I think that's not true, and real life bears this out. So this is one of my favorite memes. If I make you breakfast in bed, a simple thank you is all I need. Not all this, how did you get in my house business, right? And I think that this is a great meme that illustrates the high fidelity principle. Has anyone seen the movie High Fidelity? Okay, well, there's this scene where one of the characters is outside someone's window with a boombox and is playing music, and it's this very epic, romantic, game-changing moment in the film, right? It's a catalyst moment. Everything changes, right? And we see everything's gonna be fine, and she loves it. It's great, okay. The high fidelity principle is this. Creepiness has an inverse correlation with interest. Creepiness. We know what creepiness is? It has an inverse correlation with romantic interest. The same behavior is viewed differently based on whether or not I am romantically interested. So if I am romantically interested in you, you showing up outside my bedroom window with a boombox held over your head playing songs for me, what am I going to say? Oh. Me making you breakfast in bed. If you're romantically interested in me, how will you perceive that? Positively, right? If you are not romantically interested in me and I show up and make you breakfast in bed, where are we at on the scale? Stalker. Far toward creepy into stalker territory, right? So, I mean, it's kind of clear in real life that context matters. And so in research, we want to acknowledge this a bit more, right? That context matters, particularly if we decide to engage in qualitative research. Context, it matters. High fidelity. Okay. What questions do we have about the high fidelity principle? Really? I believe you, because it's a great movie. Okay, well, okay, hold on. Do you think that might have, if I double click it, do you think it fixes it? I don't know. It's a crapshoot.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that we recognize this, what do we do about it? Well, Takas says that first we have to articulate the values that we find meaningful. We have to actually say, all right, this is a thing that I believe. This is a way that I approach the world. When I look at things, here's what it has to get through to get to me so that I can do something with it. Then we have to identify their origin. Why do I feel that way? Why do I believe that's true? Why is this important to me? And then we have to interrogate their justification. That means we have to actually be kind of brutally honest with ourselves and say, all right, legit, is this something that I can actually commit to? Now that I put words on it, and I know where it comes from, is this really what I think? If I look at it objectively and cognitively, not emotionally, am I okay with this, right? So this is kind of the process for unpacking your epistemology. Make sense? Okay. So let's try it. But it's always easier to judge someone else. I mean, am I right? I'm right? I'm right, because it is. Then it, oh, hold on, I've got all kinds of bad things going on right now. Okay, so let's try it with a newspaper article. See, right, how, yes, memes, I love memes. I could spend all day laughing at pointless memes, but I feel as though I found some good ones to illustrate my purpose here. I've got this article here. It is the same one, the Dallas News article about creation science. Let's identify evidence of the identities and positionalities that might have led to their epistemological stance. Look for things in the article that might explain why they have the commitments that have led to this inquiry at this time, okay? I'm going to ask you some questions, and then I'm going to restate your response. And if you would be so kind, if you would, in this giant space where there's a video that wouldn't print, for obvious reasons, because, you know, video, if you could write down what I say to restate it. Is that something that we could agree to do? All right, what did you notice? What are some identities or positionalities that might have led to the assumptions or their epistemological stance?
There's lots of conflict.
So conflict. Don't write that down. Let me work on that. Could you unpack that for me a little bit?
Talking about, there was one part I read that they're saying that these people aren't even real scientists. They're just pulling data out and basing it on conclusions. They're not digging into it.
So would it be, don't write this down, I'm asking a question. Would it be fair to say that perhaps the people who work at the Creation Research Institute for Creation Research, perhaps see themselves as going against the stream, swimming upstream, right? So is experiencing resistance kind of, would that fall in line with what you're saying? Could you write experiences of resistance in your spot? Are you fighting the flow? Thanks, Jacob. What else did you notice?
If you think back to your earlier slide on differences between qualitative and quantitative researchers, then one of the things that you discussed was that facts have an objective reality, and that seems to be a primacy here, is that no matter what facts you choose to interpret, you're starting from facts. So not starting from an idea, not starting from a question, but starting from, I'm going to take an extreme position and throw these facts at you, and then you're going to throw facts back at me. So maybe the better way to say it is that the positions the parties take in this article are the extreme positions.
And they're non-negotiable, right? These are non-negotiable facts, right? So maybe write in your spot non-negotiables. Non-negotiables. These facts are incontrovertible. They are not negotiable. They are. Thank you, Dr. Williams. What else did you notice? What are some other identities or experiences that might have led to these commitments?
The way you interpret the Bible, if you interpret it, okay, one day equals 24 hours, or one day can equal millions of years.
Or even if you read the Bible,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's an assumption that it needs to be read and it needs to be interpreted literally. There are a lot of assumptions about the Bible here. So could we say religious experience? Could we put that in the category religious experience? Which is tricky because being an atheist is kind of a religious experience. It's how you experience religion, through rejection, right? You reject it. So there are all different ways to kind of explore that, and we will in a hot second, but for right now, religious experience. Thank you. What else did you notice?
On page 3, that top section, the very last part, they're talking about doing it because you want people to be saved. So I don't know if this maybe falls under religious experience, but that it kind of goes back to some of the things that we've said, but it goes back to the purpose of why you want to prove this wrong or why you want to prove it right. So, the goal is in mind, or, they're out to prove a point before they are to really answer questions.
And so we might say that perhaps they have a particular vision of how they want society to be. They want society to be full of people who are saved. Which Christian, the Christian version of saved, right? This is the goal. So maybe in our spot we might write something like goals for society or visions of societal improvement. Something about how society should be. What else do we notice? I feel like there's another awesome thing, really interesting thing on page 3.
I underline what was right above that, where it says that the scientists at ICR grew up in conservative Christian homes that promoted young earth creationism. So their background.
Good. Particularly, this one references familial background, right? They're members of a family. Each of them was members of some family, right? So maybe we might just write in our space family. And then on page 2, I thought there was an interesting, it almost seemed like a side trip. Anybody read anything on page 2 where you thought this is relevant to the larger discussion, but perhaps background information?
Yeah, if you're talking, are you talking about Henry Madison Morris and the fact that he was the founder of creation science, so his children and relatives come by this very honestly?
Yes, because they're part of that same family cohesiveness. And right above that, it talks about what led to the situation in the 50s, right, that he lived through, okay? So we have stuff in the 1850s, and we have stuff in the 1950s, right? And so could we maybe write in our big spot that we live in a certain time? We have a temporal experience. So if I ask you to characterize the state of California politically, what would you say? Is it conservative or liberal? Liberal. And if I say characterize the state of Texas politically, is it conservative or liberal? You would say conservative. Now notice that the ICR moves from California to Texas, right? Possibly a more hospitable environment in which to achieve their goals. So we could also maybe put in our spot that we have a geographic identity. We live in a certain place that's not just about climate and landforms, but has a character of its own.